Welcome to Whole View Farm. Today we're going to talk about how we plan our pasture rotations, manage grazing, and pretty excited. I got some new drone footage of the farm I want to share with you, and stick around till the end. We're going to go over some tips and tricks on how to use Google Earth Pro, and that's the software we use to plan out our rotations ahead, where we're going, and keep track of where we've been. Stick around. Just finished with morning chores. We got them in a fresh paddock. Everybody's looking pretty good. It's been 20s last couple days. Today's supposed to get up into the 40s, maybe even to the 50s over the first part of this week. So all this snow should be melted. It should open up some more grass that they're able to get to and forage. And yeah, they got water. Dogs are fed. Llama's got her grain. Life is good. So we're looking at Google Earth Pro here on my screen. It is free software. You can download it. We're running it on our Debian Linux system here, but you can also get it for Mac, Windows. It's pretty powerful. You know, you've got the entire Google maps, but you can, with this desktop version, and I do want to specify, because you can run Google Earth Pro in a web-based version online. I would really recommend, if you're able to, download the actual desktop version. You get some additional features, some additional controls that you can't do with the online version. So what we're looking at here is Whole View Farm. Welcome to Whole View Farm. We've got an 80-acre parcel. And zoom in here, you can see here's our home right here, nestled in the trees. We've got our garage. There's also a pole building here we call the machine shed, and this is that big red barn you've probably seen in some of our videos. Up top here is 26 acres that used to be crop fields, but we've converted into a pasture. There's a little draw here that kind of goes downhill where the water runs. It's got some trees in it. Otherwise, this is kind of our bare slate and where most of our focus has been so far. We've got about an additional 40 some acres down here of grazable land, including this 1.5 acre pond. This is pretty nice back here. It's actually, the tree cover is not as dense as it looks in the overhead. It's pretty opened up. There is some grass in there. It's kind of got a nice silvo pasture feel. And then there's about 10 acres in the corner here that's fully wooded. We plan to do some thinning in there, open things up into more of a silvo pasture, because it is a whole lot of little skinny maple trees and could use some good forestry management. Some of it's pretty steep back here. This whole valley, you can see there's a big valley here and another one here, so it gets pretty steep. They say up to 40-degree slopes in some spots. It's one of the reasons we're going with sheep. They're a little more nimble, but we've had cows on it. We custom grazed some cows last year, and when we bought the property, they were just continuously grazing a bunch of Holstein steers out here, and cows were handling it just fine. Looking at Google Earth and how we use it, there are some basically folders and elements over here on the left in this places thing. So you can see I've got a folder for Whole View Farm. I've got one for topography, water lines. I can draw things on here. I can do what's called paths or polygons or pins. If I turn this fencing layer on, you can see where our fence lines are. The yellow fences are repaired, they're functional. That's our hot 5-strand, well, four in some spots, but mostly 5-strand high tensile lines that are active and working and functional. So we've got this whole 26 acres up here fenced in. We call this the training lot. That's about a 1/4 acre lot that we have hot wire on the inside and then woven wire fencing on the outside. So when we bring new animals on the farm, we can put them in there. They can't bolt through the fence and make it through the wires. Gives us a chance to introduce them to the electric fencing if they haven't experienced it before, and get trained on how to behave. And we usually put some of our temporary fencing up inside of there when we're doing that as well, to help them get used to that poly wire as well. This is about a 1 acre, well, it's 3/4 acre area here that we call the control area. You can see these pink lines here are gates. So we've got a lot of different ways we can go. We can bring animals from one side of the farm and get them across to the other. And then we've got a little over a 1/2 acre lot down here that we call the triangle because it's triangular. Go figure. The orange lines that you see down around here are where we've got existing fencing that is in a state of disrepair. Most of it, there is a very, very old layer of barbed wire fencing that's severely disrepaired. And then anywhere from 1 to 10 feet inside of that, there's actually a high tensile line that's maybe 20 plus years old and is very overgrown. Most of the posts are shot, so but the wire's good. So we plan to roll that up, clean that up. I'd like to take out the old barbed wire so that it's not potential dead short on our electric lines. And I'd like to move that high tensile, put on some new posts on the property line, on that barbed wire line, and have that be our only perimeter fence. It's just about a mile worth of fencing we've got to fix up. So this year, our goal is just this east side. I really want to get that whole side operational so we've got a source of power over there. We have been able to use that side of the property, but we have to run temporary lines to bring power all the way back here. It's a whole lot of extra work. So the more we can get this perimeter fence repaired and operational, get the electric flowing, the easier our life's going to be as we rotate around the farm. That is the farm. I think we're going to take a look at some drone footage of this valley right here. It's a good place to start. We've got a few different drone shots, so hopefully you'll stick around for those. Let's take a look at this valley. Okay, sorry if this is a little shaky. I am not a great drone pilot. It's having a lot of fun doing it, but it's a learning curve. Right now we're up by the house up here. We're kind of looking out over the triangle, and now we're panning back towards this valley right in front of us. See, there's pretty nice tree cover here. We've got some hickories and some apple trees back here. Gives us a little bit of shade, a little bit of shelter within this valley. Up on the right side here, we call this the high road. It's a nice kind of flat driving lane where we can get to the back of the property, so that's really nice. We're turning off towards this nice grove of shagbark hickories right here, and let's move that in a little better. Then we're kind of angled towards the pond, flying this way across this big hill here. This is a nice grassy knoll here, really good grazing up top there, and heading off towards the pond. It's about 1.5 acre pond. You will notice there's a couple of circles in the middle of it, and that's where we've got an aeration system. It's a solar powered aerator that keeps the water open most of the year until it drops down into the teens. It pretty much stays open water. Of course, when I took this, it was in the teens, so that's iced over for the day. And you'll see you might see the solar panel down there on the left side. And then across the pond here, we're looking at this hill where there's all these nice apple trees, and there's a ton of them over there. Oh yeah, there's our dock we can fish off of, use it for the canoe. But these apples are not, there's a few we found that are really nice eating apples, so that's great. Most of them are smaller, not something you'd be picking for fruit, but the deer sure love it. We do have to be careful with the sheep. If they find a bunch of fermented apples, that can cause bloat, so we tend to keep some free choice baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, out for them, just in case. And now we're heading over towards this east property line. You can see we just passed this cut in where the old highway was running there. And we're coming up, looking across this valley back towards the hickory grove there, and then the barn behind it. If you look, you'll notice there's a kind of an odd swale here. yeah, I don't know when that was built or why. It's sort of a half circle here. There's another smaller one to the right of it that's a little straighter. It's weird because it seems to divert the water down here into the valley, which is not what you'd want to do for a keyline type swale system, but not sure what the purpose was. But we're just observing at this point before we make any decisions or changes. So we're flying right across this 920, we call it. It's a 920 foot long fence that divides the property. And we're getting out over this former crop field. That's our newly established pasture. That's where the sheep are right now in this strip coming up. And you can see, yeah, there's some of the rams. You can see where we've been unrolling hay for them. And I love this because the dog comes up and starts barking at the drone, which is exactly what I want to see. It makes me think that they're paying attention and they're going to respond if some aerial predators come in looking for lambs this spring, which is a pretty good feeling. And now we're flying across the dog feeder, and there's our bale and roller, the that we've parked with a partial bale. You know, we just unroll what they think they need each day, and then yeah, heading back towards the barn. So now let's take a look at our grazing rotation planning and how we do that in Google Earth. So the way we organize our grazing plan in here is first by year and then by season. So you can see here I've got a 2023 sheep moves folder here, and if I hit the little triangle I can expand that, and we'll see we've got well, one for planting, so that's just where we've put some seed down. I kind of keep track of that, draw it on. But you can see I got a summer 2023 and then an autumn 2023, and I start summer on the summer solstice. I mean, to me, that's when it starts. June 21st, I believe it is, 23rd, something like that. Good thing we got the internet because I forget these things. Summer 2023. This actually starts in July because that's when I started using this system. And so I've got July, August, September in our summer folder. So it starts at the solstice and ends in the autumnal equinox. Then autumn picks up at the equinox. We got October, November, December, and then we get into 2024. So if I turn this layer on for July, you can see it pops up here, and I can see these big, these pink lines we use are, I call them paddock splits for lack of a better name, and then I usually draw these green lines as divisions of the paddocks that are the longer ones. I'll turn on August so you can see where we're going here. Yeah, so I've got the paddock division line kind of defining this whole big strip, and then I put these pins in with the date where we moved the animals in. So you can see July 10th is when we put the animals in here last year. That's the sheep flock, and we sort of gave them really big areas. We did end up realizing that was too big, and we tightened it down. That's kind of why we divided this in half when we got over here, and then we went up this way, kind of zigzagged. Oh, how did that work? Yeah, so, yeah. See, I forget. That's why I got to write stuff down. We went up in strips like this. These are about 0.15 acres for each of these paddock, roughly speaking. It's not an exact science. I am, when I draw this up, I'm looking for landmarks. Like, for instance, there's a jog in our permanent high tensile fence here that I can kind of gauge my position on, and close counts. It doesn't have to be down to the inch or anything, but it gives us that reference. I can say, when were we there? Because it's so hard to remember these things. So we come in, we brought them back in here in December, and I knew it had been 5 months since this area was grazed. I knew that this had stopped grazing at a time of year when there's still some growth happening, getting into, especially into September. So we knew there'd be some level of stockpile there. When we get later in the season, we turn on September here. This, you see, is a big area here. That's when we went up to George Heller's, to the SFA grazing school up there. And my parents were kind enough to farm sit, but we didn't want to make them have to move fences, so we went ahead and gave them this bigger area. let's turn on autumn. So that gets us through. That was our summer grazing plan right here last year. Started recording it a little late. Prior to that, they had been over here. I just remember. Um, but now that we've got this nice way to record things, we can be a little more detailed. And I know it looks like a mess when you turn everything on. It's a lot to keep track of, but it really does work for us to say where were we and be able to come up with an answer. So this was kind of an interesting arrangement. This actually worked out really nice, where we put these paddock divisions here and stopped short, and then did another one coming down here, so that we were able to rotate kind of in an S-shaped fashion, and we could just pick up this fence, move it over here, or pick up this fence, move it over here, and we'd leapfrog two fences that we would move to just create the next paddock. We'd always try to stay one ahead, and yeah, it worked really well. And then once in a while, we do like to back fence. That's a little more sporadic. In the growing season, I really do strive to make it so that they don't have access to their own manure for more than 3 days, and then they're out of there, so we're not re-ingesting parasites. Doesn't always work out that way. But I do try to keep track of where we've back fenced, and that's just a little pin here to say, okay, we put up a fence here on the 29th, so I know everything back here has been fully resting since that fence went up and the animals were excluded from that area. I hope that makes sense. It's a little confusing at first, and you definitely have to keep up with it every day or every few days. You got to be coming back and updating this record, or you lose track of what days you were on what paddocks. One of the things I want to mention is, hey, we started this in October. Like, that's really past the growing season, right? So all of this we grazed through October, November, brought us all the way to December. But we're not going to go back there this time of year, right? We're let's take a look at this year's grazing. So I can turn these layers off, and I can turn on 2024 and see what we've done so far. You see, we started here in December. The flock's a little different, right? We've added some goats. We've got a few more sheep than we did. So we're doing a little bit larger paddocks than we did before, and we're strip grazing down, and then we moved them up here and we strip grazed down this way. Then we went around here, and we're working our way back this way. Our plan is to go all the way down here, around here, and all the way back to the draw. But we're not going to regraze this season. This is going to be allowed to continue to rest because it didn't have that fall regrowth stockpiling opportunity. We are going to let them in the draw. I'm hoping there's a lot of multiflora rose, some prickly ash, some kind of undesirable shrubbery, I'll say, in there. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the goats and the sheep can do with that, especially since we should be getting in there, I would say, right around beginning, middle of March. Probably actually more like middle, end of March, now I'm thinking about it, because we got the rest of February to get around here. Probably get into March, and be second or third week in March, we should be over here. So those shrubs will be budding out a little bit. The sheep and goats will be able to get in there and nail those roses, hopefully give them a good setback. And then after that, we're going to make a lane. We're going to bring them down along the wood line here. There's a gate right here. We can get through over to here, and we're going to start grazing this area. And I really want to have them under these hickory. There's a nice hickory grove here. There's a valley, another draw here with a lot of roses in it. So it's a good place to camp and have lambs. So that's my goal. By mid-May, I want to be right in here for lambing season, and give the goats a chance to hammer on these roses, make sure they got some shade and some shelter when those fresh babies are dropping. So that is the plan. Looking back a little further, these are, you can see, much bigger paddocks. They cover the whole farm, and this is when we brought in a friend's cows. It was 40 cows that we rotated around the property once. We used pretty much the whole property except for the woods back here. and it was a great experience. We got to get some cattle handling experience. Gave our friend Peter a chance to rest his pastures because with the drought we had, it was pretty nasty. I want to point out that it was June when we started here with the cows. Now we were moving them pretty fast, big areas. We knew that this was a freshly seeded pasture, wasn't a ton of grass, a lot of forbs in there, so we were moving really fast with those cows. I mean, it basically took us 10 days to get through this whole 26 acres and get them off of there. So it was fine a month later when we started the sheep over here and started doing smaller paddocks, especially since the sheep were moving slower, the grass was growing ahead of them, recovering, and there were still a ton of chicory and things that the cows weren't as interested in, left behind, that the sheep were cleaning up. So I think that was a good way to do it. You know, sheep and cows don't host each other's parasites, so they actually help in that regard. If a sheep eats the egg of say a barber pole worm that a cow dropped, it is going to find a dead end host. It's going to die off, and that actually cleans up that larvae from the field. So they're pretty good companions that way. They can help regulate each other's parasites. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the specific features that we use in Google Earth to do this mapping. This is not going to be a full tutorial. There's plenty of those online already. I just want to highlight some of the specific things that we found useful, and what I've used here to make this current pasture map. So the main lines that I'm drawing here are actually called paths. I think the idea behind a path is you're really mapping out a path, something you'd walk or drive. I've just found it's useful to be able to draw lines on the map. I knew I needed that to highlight our fences, and this path feature does the job. So when you click the path button up here, you're going to get a little dialog box. You're going to be able to name it. I kind of name them all the same thing. It doesn't really matter because it's going to show up in your folder structure as an element. I call these paddock splits. And I like to make them this pink color. You can actually choose that and pick a whole bunch of different color options, or even put in a alphanumeric code. So nice feature there. With this dialog box open, I can click on the map to make a point, and I can click to make another point, and I've got my nice straight line to delineate the next paddock here. If I keep clicking, I can actually make all kinds of crazy shapes. If I right click, I can delete the last point, so that's kind of handy, and get down to what I want, which is just this simple rectangular paddock that I made. But you can really make any shape you want, as you can add as many points as you need to your path. So I hit OK, and now I've got my path drawn in here. Like I said, I call these big blue lines the paddock divisions. Those are sort of the main long fences, and then I call these paddock splits, where I'm breaking those big long paddocks into manageable chunks that are pretty much good for a day. One day of grazing for our flurd. And then I like to label those paddocks using this place mark feature, which is a little pin up here. We drop that in, we can drag it where we want it, we can label it. This is real data that I'm catching up on adding, so we know Saturday we're there, and then I'm going to throw another one here for Sunday to 18. Oops, helps if you can type. And you can right click and go to properties if you want to change these or move them, bring that dialog box right back up. You can also select them from your elements over here. And notice, because I was highlighted on here, it dropped into the same folder, this February from the winter 2024 subfolder. And there's a lot of elements in there, so that's why it's so nice to be able to collapse these folders down, turn an entire folder on and off for visibility, and it's just a nice way to manage it, so you can get a visual on where were we in January, or where were we that quarter. Either way, it works. So we'll go ahead and mark out this morning's move, which was Monday, 2 219, that's today. And that's where we put them this morning. You can see once I get to this corner, that's a really nice landmark. It's a permanent fixture, so I kind of know where I am in relation to that. And you know, when I get back out there and look at the actual paddocks, I may make some adjustments. No big deal. In fact, I think this one was a little smaller, so I'll just right click on it, go to properties, then I can get that pointer finger and just drag these points over a little bit to adjust and better reflect the reality on the ground. How big is that paddock is a really useful thing to know, and there's a really nice measuring feature here. If I hit show ruler, I can bring up this ruler. You can see I can measure a line. I can measure a path. So line is just 2 points, very straightforward. And I can change that if I want it in yards or meters or miles. It's kind of interesting too. If I hit clear, it wipes out my line that it drew. You're not actually drawing a line with this. You're just highlighting what it is you're measuring. Path, you can get a little more complicated, have multiple points. I like to use the polygon, and then it actually gives you the area in acres, which is super useful. So let's see what our current paddock size is. I'll just select these points. Once I get all 4 points, you can see it's about a 1/4 acre paddocks is what we're doing right now for the sheep, and that's working out pretty good. And with the supplemental hay, knowing that this is not the fast growing time of year, or not really growing at all time of year, we're just going on stockpile at this point. So it's a little sparse. It's covered in snow. We are supplementing, and all those factors kind of come in, and that's what's so nice about adaptive grazing. So as those conditions change, as the number of animals change, I'm free to move all these fences around next time we come through here. In fact, I'll probably go in a whole different direction, a whole different pattern, so that I'm not repeating the same patterns over and over again. And that'll help stimulate more diversity for grazing areas at different times of year in different directions with different sets of animals. It all helps improve that forage diversity. So one thing I want to point out here, let's get rid of the ruler, is saving. It's really important. You don't want to put all this work into drawing all this stuff and then find that you've lost it. And unfortunately, it's very easy to do with this software. It doesn't auto save. You do have to manually save. And when I hit file, save to my places. Now, if I did this right now, I would really regret it, because I would only be saving what I've highlighted in this box. What I want to do is go to my top level folder here. We'll close these guys. And that is called Whole View Farm. It's got all my other folders in it. And that's what I want to have highlighted when I save. So when I do my save my places, I think may not work that way, but I just, I believe that actually saves this folder automatically, but I haven't really tested that, and I'm paranoid, so I always click on the Whole View Farm folder when I go save, and I make a backup copy. And because it's pretty easy to screw up, I like to make a bunch of backup copies, and I date them, so I don't replace that. I'll just put today's date in there instead. And I kind of have some history, so if I do lose something, I have a place to go back and get it. Maybe a little bit excessive, but like I said, it's easy to screw this part up, so I really wanted to call that out and make sure. So another really interesting feature about Google Earth is you can actually import an image and overlay it. So you could go to your local GIS map. I've done that, and you can grab an image, and you can kind of drag the corners to line up with the roadway or features that you've identified, and you can overlay it right over there. I've got a few of those that I've done in this topography section, which I think are really neat. This 20-foot contour map I actually got from our county GIS specialist. If you reach out to them, they can provide you with a contour map. And what a nice thing to be able to overlay here. And you can actually play around with the properties here and make it a little bit more transparent so you can see other layers more easily, but you can also get those 20-foot contour lines. And I have another one here. We'll close the dialog box and turn that on. I think is yeah, okay. This is what I was actually going for. This is the 2-foot contour line. It shows up better when I've got this layer on for a little background, but you see these blue lines. That gives us the 2-foot contours for our property, which is great because it's a really detailed topographical map that I can overlay. Fantastic feature for permaculture planning. Yeah, we can see the road here. We'll take a look at this on the drone footage too, but there's actually an old highway that runs right through the property, right across there, and it shows up pretty clearly on this contour map. Yeah, wonderful feature for planning. You can see the topography, see where the water is going to flow, and it really helps with planning, like pasture planning, but also how we're going to do plantings, where we're going to put trees, where we want to think about water features, things like that. So great feature, and you can actually import just an image and drag it over top and make it line up with this, and then have that as a layer that you can turn on and off. So really nice feature there, and we've gotten a lot of use. It's given us some really great perspective as we're planning our farm design here. So now you know how we're using Google Earth Pro to keep track of our pasture rotations. It's certainly not the only solution you could use to do that. There are some different phone applications and things that are dedicated to pasture mapping. I like Google Earth because it's free, relatively easy to use, and widely available. It gets the job done, but that's how we're doing it. Doesn't mean it's the right solution for everyone. I think for a lot of people, just paper and pen would work just fine. If you named your paddocks, you had a way to identify them, and just kept a chart, that would work too. The important takeaway is that you need to know where your animals have been, how long the grass has been able to rest, and if you don't keep track of that somehow, you're not going to remember. Well, the sun is shining, animals are grazing, snow's melting, and life is good.